Aditya, Xi Jinping wants Taiwan. Could this open up a fourth global conflict?
Well, two things here. One, obviously, there are no surprises. It's a Chinese dream, the reunification. Although it's a little different from what he said last year.
Right.
During his New Year message last year, he said we are part of the same family.
Yes.
And this time around, he says that reunification is inevitable.
Yeah.
Reunification will happen.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the president of Taiwan has criticized this as expected, because elections are about to also happen there, and the vote is sharply divided, and accused China of interference in the internal affairs of the Taiwanese. Obviously, we've seen over the last many months and years provocations coming in from Beijing towards China, apart from the military provocations as well, entering their air defense area. But you rightly asked me about the fourth conflict. At a time when Israel-Hamas conflict is brewing over the last 3 months, and we have, of course, for almost now for 2 years, the war between Ukraine and Russia.
It's entering its third year.
This is an important conflict area which the world is watching very closely, because there have been provocations across the South China Sea, in Taiwan, and the Chinese haven't really been making friends all across the globe. When we speak about Maldives, when we really speak about Djibouti, when we speak about all other areas, including Australia, Canada, with Canadians also accusing the Chinese of interference, Australians accusing them, and of course we've seen the relations on several matters with US, UK and other partners as well. So I think this is a area of conflict to be closely watched, but I don't think that the Chinese will immediately put any kind of an aggressive measure or posturing, but there will be a strong messaging that will continue through the year.
Strong messaging continue through the year. Deepak, what do you think are the possibilities? Like this CIA mentions that Xi Jinping could actually make a break for it and go and try and grab Taiwan before 2027. What are the problems in his path? What kind of problems does he face in a military takeover of Taiwan?
See, what they need is complete air and sea supremacy.
Right.
That means that they will have to take on and virtually wipe out the US Navy, which is the most powerful naval force in human history. Now that's far easier said than done.
Right.
It's a 136 or 160 kilometer channel that separates Taiwan. And what you also have to understand is that there are defenses in place in Taiwan as well.
Yes.
So even should a Chinese vessel, actually end up landing, they'll need to be an overwhelming force to take on the Taiwanese, who will put up some spirited defense at the very least. Let us be charitable to the Chinese and say that the Taiwanese may not be up to but there will be some defense. So the fact is that unless they can actually remove the US from the equation, remove the other allies from the equation, it's almost impossible. And there's just one more thing that I'd like to mention. The last time the Chinese actually had like some sort of superiority was in 2021, when they actually tested their hypersonic missile.
Right.
So if they wanted a Pearl Harbor-esque moment, that was the time when they had a weapon that could have done it, and nobody would have figured out what had happened.
Right.
But I think it's too late for that.
But now I think they've kind of let the cat out of the bag.
China's running out of time for a military operation.
It's running out of time. I think the world has kind of woken up to the fact. But Aditya, what are the chances that the US will intervene militarily? I mean, it's been very ambivalent about whether it would, stand by militarily if, China tries to grab Taiwan. Taiwan is, of course, far more important geopolitically to the world, not just to the United States. But tell us why the US would want to intervene militarily in the case of Taiwan, which it didn't in Ukraine.
Firstly, I have doubts. I strongly feel that the US will not interfere, at least the boots on ground will not happen. But if you remember, Sandeep, a few years back, Donald Trump came up with a statement that from Germany and from Europe, a lot of troops will be moved to the Indian subcontinent and in that area, and there will be boots on ground. And there were a lot of questions and stories about whether these boots will be somewhere strategically pointed towards India as well to counter China. I don't think that is going to happen. But what is going to happen is two things. Let's remember that US is also going towards elections. The November, December, January, this period is crucial because this is the beginning of that election year. So there will be strong statements from both sides, the Republicans and the Democrats, against the Chinese. Donald Trump, also trying his best to return against Biden, will be going all ballistic against China because that follows a domestic America First policy as well. On the other hand, we will see the Chinese try to engage the Americans as much as possible because they know that the Americans are exhausted completely with the two wars really brewing.
Yes.
So I think there will be continuous provocations through the South China Sea, and with relations not going that great with Japan, with Vietnam and others, they will continue to provoke and see that the American presence also is spread across the region, and they are exhausted completely militarily.
Exactly, and that seems to have happened in that case. But Deepak, let's not forget the fact that China itself is going through an economic recession of sorts. They're not growing the way they thought they would, and this was a fact that Xi Jinping, mentioned in that New Year address of his. How much of a downer is that going to be for his plans of reunifying Taiwan?
I think Xi Jinping's present popularity, his survival in the hot seat in China, is actually the product of 10 years of solid double-digit growth, almost double-digit growth that they had. For him, it's a major concern because the understanding or the social contract in China is such that the government gives them growth and the people stay quiet.
Right.
Now, when the growth is out of the window, there is that pressure. And that's not the only pressure. There are other pressures. There is wide-scale and growing unemployment.
Yes.
There's an aging population. So that means that the number of people who will depend on the state and on others for their survival, that's growing. So China has a number of problems that are emerging.
Right.
And the longer Xi Jinping stays in power, there'll also be political opposition.
Right.
At least the paranoia of it.
Right, and we just did that story recently, if you remember, on the Chinese, tens of thousands of them actually fleeing China and trying to enter the United States illegally. I mean, that's bizarre. I don't think there was a time when you had so many Russians trying to enter the United States during the Cold War. But be that as it may, Aditya, what could be the biggest event of this year, 2024, that could actually bring China and the US close to some kind of a conflict? Would it be that, as you mentioned, that the political exigencies, both Xi has to appear strong, and of course, you have a president going into a lame duck president going into an election. What could trigger off a misunderstanding of sorts?
I think a military provocation in Taiwan could be something that could trigger that. But personally, I don't feel that there will be any kind of a large-scale conflict that will develop in this election year for the Americans. And the Chinese, as you said, are dealing with an economic crisis as well. And I think both these countries will be more focused towards their own domestic concerns. Of course, larger strategic global concerns are paramount, and the Chinese are known to surprise us all. But I think in this particular matter, the Chinese will be more restrained. They will try to provoke the Americans. The Americans have done that far too many times with the speaker, and several others making visits to Taiwan, etc.
Right.
I think those provocations from both sides will continue.
News9 Plus. Download now.